The air crackled with a tension that could only be described as electric. I clutched a stack of flyers for my struggling bakery and felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I saw him. Charles, my ex-husband, the man who had left her with nothing but a mountain of debt and a broken heart, stood at the entrance of the community center, his arm possessively around me had never seen before. I am the one who radiated the kind of carefree confidence that I had lost years ago. Charles's eyes, cold and calculating, met me across the room and a smirk twisted his lips. This wasn't just a chance encounter. This was a calculated move, a cruel reminder of the power he still held over me. "Well, look at that, my dear ex-wife," he remarked with a snide tone as if finding amusement in our unexpected encounter. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I asked, "What brings you here?" "What's wrong with enjoying a night out in our charming little town with my future wife?" he replied, unnecessarily pulling his fiancée closer by her waist. Barbara, his fiancée, looked between us with a confused expression. "Do you know her?" she asked him hesitantly. Rolling his eyes, Charles answered, "Barbara, darling, remember the one I told you about, my ex-wife Jennifer?" He shot me a cold glare. "The one who tried to take everything I have in our divorce," he added with a hint of bitterness. Heat flooded my cheeks and I struggled to restrain myself from reacting to his smugness. "Do not twist the truth, Charles," I retorted, meeting his gaze squarely. "Wasn't it you who refused to pay a penny in alimony thanks to that prenuptial agreement you forced me to sign?" I continued, feeling anger simmering beneath the surface. His eyes flashed with anger. "You mean the prenup that protected me from your greedy intentions?" he countered, leaning in closer. "Enjoy your suffering, Jennifer, knowing you walked away with nothing." I narrowed my eyes at him, my nails digging into my palms. How could he make light of our marriage as if it meant nothing? "You accomplished this battle, Charles, but I'm not done fighting," I declared, my gaze shifting to Barbara with a sense of pity for her unknowing involvement. "You may have found a new plaything, but I won't let you harm my son the way you've hurt me," I added, my voice firm. He laughed dismissively. "Your son Kevin is as much mine as he is yours, and if anyone's to blame for his pain, it's you and your constant meddling." The tension crackled between us as we exchanged barbs, each word a reminder of the bitterness that lingered from our past. He lowered his voice, his words carrying a warning. "You should know what's best for you and stay out of my life, Jennifer. I have my ways now, and I won't let you ruin it." With that, he walked past me, Barbara trailing behind with a hint of concern as I watched them leave. Restlessness and anger stirred within me. Just because he could talk it off didn't mean I was done fighting for my dignity and my future, especially my son. The drive home from the community center was tough. Thick silence filled the car, mingling with the confusion in my son's eyes, which only added to the tension. Seeing my expression, Kevin quietly asked, "Mom, are you all right?" "I'm all right, honey," I assured him, tightening my grip on the steering wheel. "Just caught off guard, that's all." Kevin clenched his jaw. "Mom, I can't believe he showed up there with some woman and had the nerve to talk to you like that." "I know, sweetheart," I replied, feeling Kevin's anger mirroring my own. "But we can't let him get to us." "What are you going to do now?" Kevin asked, his eyes filled with hope as he watched my discomfort. "I'm not entirely sure yet," I admitted. "But I'm not finished. That prenup left me with nothing, but there's one thing I can do." Kevin understood what I meant. "Does that mean you're going to take him to court again?" he asked, his voice filled with determination. I nodded, meeting his gaze. "Yes, that's what we're going to do now." There was a moment of silence as Kevin processed my decision. "Mom, I'm with you no matter what you decide," he said gently, rubbing my arm. His words made me smile, swelling my heart with pride and love for my son. "Thank you for always being there for me, Kevin," I said with a slight smile. With his support, I felt more determined than ever. "Let's head home first, then we'll figure out what to do about that prenup." After reaching home, I freshened up and headed to the study. I laid out all the documents related to my divorce, feeling the frustration and resentment bubbling up inside me once again. Charles had always been a master manipulator, using his power to tip the scales in his favor. That prenuptial agreement had been the source of my distress all along, leaving me with absolutely nothing. Years of marriage and a whole load of memories. There should be something we could find. Charles is not that clever, I muttered, going through the pile of papers. Kevin looked around at the scattered documents, picking up one and handing it over to me. What is this about? It was a paragraph of dense legal jargon. I squinted my eyes, reading through all the fine print. You know, Kevin, this could be something. It feels a little vague. I looked at Kevin with hope. Call Jessica for me. We need to take another look at this prenup, Kevin exclaimed swiftly, dialing her number. Now let's show Charles that he shouldn't mess with us, he declared with determination as the call connected. I leaned back, feeling a surge of determination. Charles might have thought he had bested me, but we were just getting started. This was my chance to rectify the past and reclaim my life. The following days were a whirlwind of activity as Kevin, Jessica, my lawyer, and I delved into Charles's prenuptial agreement. It was a painstaking process of sifting through financial records and legal documents, but I was resolute in my determination to see it through. Jessica's expertise was invaluable as she helped unravel the complexities piece by piece. It's all coming together now, Jessica remarked, her expression focused. Charles employed cunning tactics to shield his assets during the divorce. Charles's deceitful maneuvers frustrated me. I clenched my jaw tightly with anger. Mom, don't worry, we'll get our revenge, Kevin reassured me, his grip on my hand unwavering. We have all the evidence we need to challenge the validity of that prenup. Now we just need to present our case to the judge, Jessica affirmed. Despite the looming stress, I've steeled myself for the battle ahead. All right, let's show him that he can't get away with everything he's done, I said, a glimmer of hope flickering within me as we arrived at the courthouse. Charles's presence was undeniable. His smirk and his high-powered team of attorneys exuded confidence, but I refused to be intimidated. Who knew my ex-wife was a financial genius? I must say I'm impressed you were able to uncover all this evidence, Charles taunted, his sarcasm obvious. Ignoring his words, I focused on Jessica's words. We both know the truth, Mr. Charles, she asserted, her gaze unwavering. I advise you to take this matter seriously because the evidence we've uncovered is more than enough to challenge your invalid prenuptial agreement. Charles chuckled arrogantly. You think you can outmaneuver my legal team? You're just a nobody. This is child's play and you'll see when I emerge victorious, he sneered. Kevin had heard enough. You can't underestimate us this time. We won't let you win, he declared firmly. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Charles's face, but it was quickly replaced by a menacing smirk. I'll make sure you and your mother lose everything, just wait and see, he spat venomously. Though his words sent a shiver down my spine, I drew strength from Jessica's reassuring pat and focused on the battle ahead, determined to see justice served. Don't worry, Jen. We got it this time. He won't be able to walk away by lying this time. Repeating Jessica's words in my mind again, I moved on with deep anticipation. We watched as Jessica and her team presented our shreds of evidence to the courtroom, unraveling the complexities piece by piece. Charles's well-planned game was breaking apart. The financial empire he had built was starting to lose its foundation as evidence was stacking on top of each other firmly. Some of his associates came forward, defending his misdeeds and evil tactics. Charles viciously unraveled his team in a persistent effort to disprove our witnesses and make our evidence appear false. With passing days, it was becoming more and more clear that his measures were crumbling down, and it went crystal clear at one moment when David, a former accountant, spread out his testimony incriminating Charles. He revealed a complex web of offshore accounts and portrayed the companies that Charles used to hide his assets during our divorce. Mr. Charles would regularly instruct me to falsify financial records and divert funds to untraceable accounts, David stated, his voice unwavering. It was all part of an elaborate scheme to avoid paying a single dime in alimony or child support. The courtroom erupted in murmurs of shock and disbelief. I felt a surge of comfort wash over me. Charles's face flushed a deep shade of red, his knuckles white as he gripped the table's edge in front of him. Objection, Your Honor! One of Charles's lawyers shouted, springing to his feet. This witness is biased, and his testimony amounts to hearsay. However, the judge remained steadfast. Overruled. The witness's testimony is relevant and admissible, she declared, fixing a stern gaze on Charles. Mr. Charles, you would do well to refrain from any further outbursts. Charles's jaw clenched, his eyes simmering with rage, yet he remained silent, his shoulders rigid as he sank back into his chair. As the proceedings continued, the tide turned against him. Media coverage intensified, with reporters delving into his past, uncovering a trail of uncertain business dealings and unethical practices. Suddenly, the once untouchable Charles found himself thrust into the spotlight of public outrage. His business empire began to crumble as investors and partners scrambled to distance themselves from the growing scandal. "This is a disaster," Charles growled, pacing the courthouse hallway. "How could this be happening?" I couldn't help but feel a small twinge of satisfaction as I watched him unravel. "Maybe if you hadn't spent so much time deceiving everyone, this wouldn't be happening," I replied, my voice tinged with smugness. Charles's eyes narrowed and he stepped closer, jabbing a finger in the air. "This isn't over, Jennifer. I'm going to make you and your pathetic team pay for this. I'll make sure you lose everything." I stood my ground, refusing to be intimidated. "Go ahead and try, Charles, but this time the truth is on our side." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in his turmoil as I reunited with Kevin and Jessica. A sense of renewed hope washed over me. The tides were shifting, and the path to justice was becoming clearer with each passing day of the trial. The pressure around Charles's neck tightened. The evidence we unearthed, thanks to Jessica's relentless efforts, painted a damning picture of his deceitful and manipulative behavior. A pivotal moment arrived when we uncovered a complex scheme Charles had concocted to conceal assets during our divorce. Jessica and her team meticulously combed through financial records, tracing a labyrinth of offshore accounts and shell companies. "This is it, Jen," Jessica declared, her eyes sparkling with triumph. "We've got him dead to rights. The court will have no choice but to invalidate that prenup." I felt a surge of relief and anticipation, though a tinge of apprehension lingered. "Are you sure, Jessica? Charles has always found a way to wriggle out of these situations." Jessica nodded, her expression resolute. "Absolutely. The evidence is ironclad. Charles's little game of financial hide-and-seek is about to catch up with him." A sense of cautious optimism settled over me. After years of being on the defensive, the tables were finally turning. Charles's arrogance and overconfidence had led to his downfall, and I was more than ready to witness him face the consequences of his actions. As we returned to the courthouse for the next round of proceedings, the tension in the air was palpable. Charles and his team of lawyers seemed visibly on edge, their faces etched with a mixture of frustration and desperation. Jessica wasted no time in presenting our findings, her voice clear and confident as she laid out the details of Charles's elaborate scheme. The courtroom fell silent, save for the occasional gasp of shock and disbelief, as the magnitude of Charles's deception became increasingly clear. Charles attempted to maintain composure, but his usual swagger and bravado had been replaced by thinly veiled panic. When Jessica concluded her presentation, he rose to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "Objection, Your Honor," he shouted, his voice trembling. "This is all a fabrication, a blatant attempt to smear my reputation and take what is rightfully mine." Hey, pause for a moment. Would you care to support us? Like this video and subscribe for more. Now let's dive back into the story. The judge, however, remained unfazed. "Overruled, Mr. Wright. Miss Lee's presentation is factual and well substantiated. I would advise you to refrain from further outbursts." Charles's face flushed with fury, but he remained silent, his eyes narrowing as he glared at Jessica. As the presentation drew to a close, Jessica turned to face the judge, her expression solemn. "Your Honor, based on the overwhelming evidence we have presented, we are confident that the prenuptial agreement between Mr. Wright and Miss Reed is null and void. Mr. Wright's blatant deception and manipulation have rendered the agreement invalid, and we respectfully request that it be set aside." The courtroom erupted in a murmur of anticipation, and I felt Kevin's hands squeeze mine, his eyes shining with hope. I held my breath, my heart pounding in my chest as the judge considered Jessica's words. After what felt like an eternity, the judge cleared her throat, her gaze sweeping across the room. "Having carefully reviewed the evidence presented by Miss Lee, I find that the prenuptial agreement between Mr. Wright and Miss Reed is indeed invalid. Mr. Charles Wright's fraudulent actions and concealment of assets have rendered the agreement null and void." The courtroom exploded with cheers, and I felt a rush of relief and triumph wash over me. Kevin pulled me into a tight hug, his voice choked with emotion. "We did it, Mom," he exclaimed. "We finally beat him." I held my son close, tears of joy streaming down my face. "Yes, Kevin, we did. Justice has finally been served." Turning to face Charles, I saw the true depth of his defeat. His face was pale, his shoulders slumped in defeat. For once, the man who had always seemed untouchable was finally being held accountable for his actions. "This isn't over, Jennifer," he snarled, his voice trembling with rage. "I'll make you pay for this. Mark my words." I met his gaze unflinchingly. "No, Charles, this time it is over. Your reign of deceit and manipulation has come to an end." With that, I turned and walked away, knowing that I had finally reclaimed the power he had taken from me all those years ago. In the aftermath of the court's ruling, Charles's once formidable empire began to crumble at an alarming rate. The public scrutiny and legal repercussions of his fraudulent activities had a devastating impact on his business ventures and personal life. I watched with a mixture of satisfaction and pity as Charles's world came tumbling down around him. His fiancée, Barbara, was the first to abandon the ship, her eyes filled with betrayal. "How could you do this, Charles?" she cried, her voice laced with raw emotional pain. "All this time I thought you were this successful, upstanding businessman, but you're just a liar and a cheat." For once, Charles was rendered speechless, his usual bravado nowhere to be found. He stood there, his shoulders slumped, as Barbara gathered her belongings and stormed out of their shared apartment. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for the young woman, despite the animosity I harbored towards Charles. She had unwittingly become a pawn in his twisted game, and I knew all too well the sting of betrayal by someone you trusted most. However, any empathy I felt for Barbara was swiftly overshadowed by the sense of justice prevailing. Charles's once mighty business empire began to crumble under the weight of the revelations unearthed during court proceedings. Formerly, loyal investors and partners now scrambled to distance themselves from the tainted legacy he had built. Lawsuits and investigations mounted, leaving Charles facing the stark reality of financial ruin. "This is all your fault, Jennifer. If you had just left well enough alone, I could have continued living in peace," he shouted, cornering me outside the courthouse. I met his gaze unflinchingly. "This is the consequence of your greed, Charles. You brought this upon yourself." He let out a frustrated growl, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "I'll make you pay for this. Mark my words. I'll take everything from you, your business, your son, your pathetic excuse for a life." I couldn't help but feel a pang of fear at his words, but I refused to let it show. "Threatening me won't do you any good, Charles. The damage has been done, and you have no one to blame but yourself." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him to stew in his rage. Despair filled me as I reunited with Kevin and Jessica. However, a flicker of contentment arose within me. "Kevin, now Charles's reign of terror is finally going to end sooner or later," I mumbled. Kevin embraced me, the tension in his body easing away. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. Thanks for not giving up," he said softly, with relief in his voice. "Yes, my dear, and it's time we help those wronged by Charles," I replied. Jessica, silent until now, stepped forward with understanding shining in her eyes. "Indeed, Jen, we can make a huge change," she said as we discussed using my settlement to aid other victims. A sense of purpose washed over me. Charles's downfall had been a grueling journey, but justice had prevailed. Now we had the chance to ensure his legacy of greed and deceit would not be forgotten. And so, as the dust settled on Charles's downfall, standing at a crossroads, uncertainty clouded my path. The settlement from the invalidated prenup offered newfound financial freedom, yet the journey had left me drained. "Mom, this is our chance to start over. We can do anything we want now," he exclaimed, his enthusiasm contagious. I couldn't help but smile at his optimism. "You're right, Kevin, but I'm not quite sure where to begin," I admitted. Jessica, ever pragmatic, stepped in with a reassuring smile. "Well, Jen, I think the first step is to take a breath and consider what you truly want to do with this opportunity. It's about building a better future for you and Kevin." Her words struck a chord with me. "You're right. I want to make sure we do this the right way, without repeating Charles's mistakes." "Whatever you decide, Mom, I'm with you. We're in this together," he said, his support unwavering. Pride and gratitude swelled within me for my son. his steadfastness a constant source of strength. "Thank you, Kevin. I couldn't have done this without you." After much deliberation, Kevin and I agreed to use a portion of the settlement to expand my small business, finally giving it the resources it needed to thrive. Jessica assisted us in navigating the legal and financial aspects, ensuring wise and sustainable choices. However, the rest of the settlement was earmarked for a more altruistic purpose. Inspired by the resilience and determination I displayed in my battle against Charles, I decided to establish a foundation to support other single mothers in our community. "This is an incredible idea, Jen," Jessica said, her eyes shining with approval. "You've been through so much, and now you have the opportunity to help others in a similar position." I nodded, a sense of purpose filling me. Exactly, Charles's actions hurt so many people, and I want to ensure that his legacy doesn't continue to haunt others. This foundation is my way of reclaiming my story and using it to empower women like me. Kevin gave my arm a gentle squeeze, his smile warm and proud. "I think it's an amazing idea, Mom. You're going to change so many lives with this." As we worked tirelessly to bring the foundation to life, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace and fulfillment. It was as if the darkness that had once clouded my life was slowly but surely being replaced by a renewed sense of hope and purpose. Then one day, as I was finalizing the details of the Foundation's mission and programs, I received an unexpected call. It was Charles, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "Jennifer," he began, his words laced with a hint of desperation. I need your help." I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. After all the pain and suffering he had caused, a part of me wanted to simply hang up the phone and never speak to him again. But something in his tone gave me pause. "What is it, Charles?" I asked, my voice cautious. "I've lost everything," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "My businesses, my investments, my reputation. It's all gone. I have nothing left." "I see," I replied with a twinge of pity. I considered my next words carefully. "What can I do about it, Charles?" He let out a defeated sigh. "I'm aware I don't deserve it, but would you spare some of your settlement to help the others that I have hurt in the past? I need to make amends, Jennifer. I need to make this right." I was taken aback by his request. The sincerity in his voice was something I had never witnessed before. For a moment, I was silent, weighing my options. Finally, I spoke, my voice steady. "Very well, Charles. I'll see what I can do." As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. Charles's fall from grace had been swift and unforgiving, but in the end, it seemed that even he had found the humility to seek redemption. With a renewed sense of purpose, I turned my attention back to the foundation, determined to ensure that my story would not be defined by Charles's betrayal, but by the triumph of resilience and compassion. Let's conclude the story shortly. The foundation thrived, a testament to Jennifer's strength and resilience. Charles, stripped of his ill-gotten gains, found himself humbled, working odd jobs to make ends meet. He never forgot the pain he had caused, and Jennifer, though still wary, saw a flicker of genuine remorse in his eyes. Kevin, now a young man, grew into a compassionate and successful entrepreneur, always mindful of the lessons learned from his mother's fight. As for Jennifer, she found joy in her work, her life a testament to the power of forgiveness and the enduring strength of a mother's love. The past, though painful, had shaped her into a woman who, despite the hardships, had found her way to happiness, a beacon of hope for others who had been wronged. After experiencing the full journey of our story, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did the story resonate with you? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay blessed. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.